Good to have you 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, not here. BJ Bennett is here on this Thursday. Glad you are making us a part of your day. Plenty to get to here on the show. BJ will chat with Michael Bennett, no relation, host of Just the Cats Radio. We'll talk some Kentucky football. They were one of the, I think, 2 teams not to have a spring game in the SEC. Also, 4 o'clock, we'll chat with the athletic director at Georgia Southern University, Jared Binko. He will join us, and we'll talk about Georgia Southern spring game. Obviously, a lot of stuff to talk about with him. And then coming up in the second hour as well, Anthony Trache, Pro Football Focus, will join us, and we'll talk all things draft 1 week out from the first round of the NFL draft, BJ. So plenty to get to with Anthony Trache in regards to what's going to happen after those first couple of picks in the draft, and where does the draft all start to twist after Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson come off the board. So plenty to get to in regards to that. Some new rules being put out there, rule changes in the National Football League that are pretty awesome as well. So we'll get to that coming up later in the show on this Thursday as well. But the Braves got one in New York last night, BJ, and I guess Ian Anderson, hey, when you're a New York guy, you get a chance to play in New York. That's twice now you've showed up big against the Yankees. Last year, 6 innings, earned runs, struck out 6 against New York. This year, 6 2/3, no earned runs, struck out 4. So obviously he loves playing the New York Yankees, and the Braves with a much-needed dub last night, heading into an off day before playing the Diamondbacks this weekend.
He's a fascinating guy, and Kevin, in some ways, he's kind of been forgotten, right? When you think about all of the focus, when you look at the rotation on Mike Soroka, when's he going to be back? Max Fried, a really bad start to the year on the IL. Charlie Morton, the newcomer, the veteran who's supposed to stabilize the rotation, and then you had Drew Smiley, who was a big time addition financially, and he went on the IL, and it's like, who's the Ian Anderson, who is one of the most talented young pitchers in baseball, a guy that has great confidence, seems to attack, doesn't walk a lot of guys generally. We saw him in the postseason last year, look very comfortable, and clearly he likes pitching against the Yankees, and you can appreciate that, kind of the big stage, big pressure. I know they're not great right now, but still pitching up there is a big time deal. I mean, in your mind, I know right now he's, if you want to put it this way, the 4th starter. In your mind, is he a guy that projects as a front end of the rotation kind of guy ultimately?
I think yes, but maybe not on this team. How is that a good enough answer? I think on a lot of teams he could. I mean, look, this is a former number 1 pick by the Braves in the draft, so he's got that kind of stuff. And you put him in the rotation with Soroka, Max Fried. Yeah, I mean, he's right there. Is he ever going to be number 1 as long as those 2 guys are in front of him? I mean, probably not. But I think that's a good problem to have, where you have 2 and 3 guys that could be number 1s elsewhere, as far down as your 2 and 3. So, yeah, I think Ian Anderson, huge call up for the Braves last year. I think it's only going to get better. Is he going to have his struggles? I fully expect that. I mean, it's not all gumdrops and lollipops when you come up to the big leagues, but it's he is off to a great start. He's pitched well in some big moments for the Braves, and I think right now with Fried out, Soroka out, he's one of those guys you're looking at to step up and continue to carry his weight, and he did that in a big way last night, and I think that was huge just to get a win. You come home, you expect to have Acuna back. I know the reports are out there on Max Fried. Is he yet to start throwing? Maybe you get Chris Martin back relatively soon. I know Sean Newcomb is in the protocol, they said, whatever that means as well. So you could be in the way of getting a couple of these guys back. I think maybe Pache could come back sometime next week. So this is a Braves team that is, floating around doing what they have to do to stay in it. And you get those guys back, I think you're a different squad. I was looking at it last night, and the Braves were in last for whatever that was worth in the East at this point, only 2.5 games out. But you're 2.5 games out, and you're kind of in the position you were somewhat last year. You have 2 of your starters out, not pitching right now. Your bullpen is kind of interesting with guys who have come in and out, and you're missing Acuna and Christian Pache, 2 of your regular starters. Ozzie Albies has missed a little bit of time feeling a little bit out there, and you've managed to not just fall off the deep end to a horrendous start. So you're still hanging around with a lot to get to when you feel like you haven't even been 100% yet. What were you going to say, Christian?
I was going to say, and last year the panic meter was much higher because you were a third of the way through the season.
Well, that's true. And again, I'm not freaking out about it. I'm just saying, like, the team that you're seeing right now is still winning its share of games, and you feel like it's a shell of what it actually is.
The Padres are 10-10 right now, and they're still ranked number 2 in ESPN's power rankings. It's a weird start. You've had 2 0-4 stretches. You're missing 3 of your frontline guys from your rotation. Everybody just don't take the BJ.
Right, Drew Smiley out as well.
Yeah, don't take the BJ Bennett train and freak out about the slow start. It's fine. You're 8-10. You got a 3-game set coming up with the Diamondbacks. You're fine.
And I think the win yesterday was a big one. Just to give you a little confidence, you feel a lot better on an off day coming off of a win than coming off of a loss, especially when you're below 500 and are still trying to kind of stabilize yourself and feel like you're the team that everybody thought you could be at the beginning of the year. And I think it's a good point made by Christian that the Yankees have a worse record than the Braves. The Padres are 500. The Nationals are really, really struggling. You're still very early, and I think Atlanta needed that win. You didn't want to drop 2 against the Yankees. You needed that win, and I think if you can have success this weekend, we'll see if Acuna's back, have success against Arizona, that would be a big-time boost for you heading into a pretty important stretch, I think.
Certainly, yeah, and this is a team that I think in the coming weeks is going to be much better than what you're showing now, and what you're showing now is not bad. What, you're 3-2 in your last 5 games, scored double-digit runs against Chicago, and now you've kind of weathered the stretch where you've been without Ronald Acuna, and you get him back. I think this team, again, is still got a lot of trajectory to get to in a division that's going to be very, very difficult with the Nationals, the Mets. I mean, even the Marlins showed you, look, they're no joke. They were in the playoffs last year. So this is going to be a tough division. I think getting out of the division has helped. You got the Cubs, Yankees, Cubs again, Diamondbacks this weekend, Cubs next week. It's been good not to have to come in and play, Phillies, Marlins, just all right in a row where you're seeing frontline pitching like what you're going to see and kind of settle in against some, I guess, more normal pitching and take advantage. So it's good to see and nice to see they're weathering the storm. And yeah, if you're in freak out mode already, like, don't go there. Man. It's fine. Just calm down. There's a lot of season left. We haven't even made it to month 2 of the season. So just inhale, exhale. It'll be fine.
All right. In your mind, who is, if you can't say the Braves, who is the top contender or the top team in the East?
Oh, wow. That's a good question because I do think the Nationals are very good, but I don't think their roster is as good. I'll say the Mets right now. And what? They've got good pitching. They've got a good solid lineup, and I think over the long haul, they will be the team to tow it out with the Atlanta Braves come September. I'm getting a lot of what are you talking about here in the studio, but again, I think the Marlins are better. The Phillies, they're good. I like the Mets roster better. If they can stay healthy, and that's been the Mets' big downfall. Not that they didn't have dudes, not that they didn't have players, is that those dudes and guys were hurt all the time, and it's hard to win when your best players can't play. And if the Mets are able to have them play, I think they're the team, in my mind, that the Braves are going to have to really stay on top of when you get to those head-to-heads. So that's kind of the way I see it early in the baseball season, BJ. Early. No need to.
Hey, look, as long as the Braves don't have to play the Marlins anymore, I think they'll be fine.
Now they're going to have to play the Marlins a lot more, as you well know. So we will get to more Braves baseball coming up. A lot to get to here in hour number 1. Michael Bennett's going to join us coming up here in about 20 minutes. Talk some SEC football with him as well. But BJ, before we step aside, I know a lot going on in the world of sports, a lot of reaction to the verdict that was read earlier this week, a lot of obviously attention being paid to the things that are going on in our society. And LeBron James has been a vocal part of that and put a tweet out there that drew a lot of criticism that he then took down and I guess reworded in a clarifying statement. Your kind of thoughts on all that's been said about LeBron James and him responding to another incident that took place this week.
Yeah, first and foremost, just another terrible tragedy, just terrible, and your heart goes out to the teenage girl. Just awful to the family. The whole situation. It's really sad, really tragic. I think LeBron did the right thing in taking the initial tweet down. Obviously, you've seen widespread criticism and some concern. I think it was right to take the tweet down and clarify, kind of reshare his perspective. Obviously, his perspective is very powerful, and you appreciate the the anger, the frustration, the concern, the fear. But I think he did the right thing in taking that initial tweet down and re-clarifying. But just a terrible situation all the way around. Your heart prayers go out to the family, to the community, and just another terrible, tragic situation, unfortunately.
Certainly. And I think that is the responsibility of everybody. We've seen in today's day and age, we talk about this a lot. BJ, when it pertains to, high school athletes, it's like when you hit send on the social media posts, that doesn't come with nuance and interpretation of what you meant to say. So I think that's one of those things where if you sound off on a topic, you have to be very clear what exactly you're trying to say, because again, it's going to be interpreted good, bad, indifferent, 6-7 different ways, depending on how. I have this conversation with people all the time about text messages. Text messages are like basically the same thing. It's like you send somebody something like, I don't know if that's going to be received in the manner you wrote it, because you type stuff out. And it's like, hey, that sounds pretty good. That's not how it's received on the other end, even though maybe what you're trying to say has a larger point to it, what have you. So I think, good to see LeBron take it down and reword it in signing off in obviously an emotional moment to try to get out there and have his point told. We'll got more to get to here on 3 and Out. BJ, we'll come back. We'll talk some college football. Michael Bennett going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll talk Kentucky football with him. They did not have a spring game. BJ, I think one of just two SEC teams not to have a spring game. I believe that's correct.
Florida also.
So we'll chat with him about what the outlook is, and also pretty good early returns on the recruiting for 2022 for Kentucky. We'll talk about that as well. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are with us. Michael Bennett going to join us in about 15. Also, top of next hour, Jared Binko, athletic director, Georgia Southern, set to join us. Their spring game this weekend. Looking forward to talking with him about that. Also, they got a big barbecue cook-off ahead of the spring game. And I know he is a big purveyor of the grill and the smoker there, BJ. So maybe we can see if he's got some inside track as to who's going to win that thing coming up on Saturday as well.
I mean, he's invited us to come eat. I mean, or maybe it was just Ben. I think he wanted Ben to come by. Maybe you. I don't know about me, but yeah, I've heard a lot about his cooking ability.
He is, yes, he is a culinary wizard, and we'll have him on here at the top of hour number 2. But obviously, a lot of schools wrapping up spring. I believe in the ACC, we already had a couple of spring games. I think Georgia Tech's is tomorrow, I believe, their spring game, and a lot of ACC schools winding it down as far as spring goes. But BJ, we look way too early out at some playmakers, and I think the ACC is at a need for some. Obviously, for some, not wearing a tiger paw in their helmet. Who is your way too early candidate for offensive player of the year? And it may be a Clemson guy, but you know.
You're going to hate this answer, but I have to ask you a question first.
Oh boy!
In your mind, is offensive player of the year, is it just a singular individual kind of distinction? Yeah.
I mean,
so it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do. You could be on a 1-10 team in your mind.
If you're the best player, yeah. If you rush for 4,000 yards and your team only manages to win one game, well, I mean, I guess that's everybody's fault. But yeah, one guy.
Okay, I'll probably lean Sam Howell out of North Carolina. I mean, the production right away as a true freshman was just absurd, and he's had some great players at running back and receiver, some guys obviously, but just downfield, fearless when he throws the ball. You go back, first or second game against Miami, a 4th and 16, he converts to get them down the field late with less than a minute left. He kind of has that moxie to him, and he's going to throw. I mean, he's going to throw it for 350, 400 yards a game, couple of touchdowns. Might need to trim down the interception some, but I think Sam Howell is the catalyst for a very good North Carolina team. Now, I don't think they'll be as good as Clemson, obviously, and I think DJ Uiagalelei, you're talking about a guy that, first start ever as a freshman at Notre Dame, he goes for over 400 yards. So if you kind of extrapolate that out, I think he's going to be very productive. Obviously, Clemson is going to be preseason top 2 or 3 at worst. They may be the favorite to win the national championship. In terms of other guys, I think De'Aaron King, we forget about him. What a player, what a career at Houston. And I know he's coming off of an injury, but I think King is still one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now he has Alabama in week 1. That's not, easy, but I think that he's a guy that's going to be in the mix. And then I'll give you a sleeper. I think Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech. And I believe it was a couple weeks ago, maybe we had Roddy Jones on talking about him. I think you're going to see him over 1,000 yards rushing, probably over 500 yards receiving, special teams as well. So those are a couple of names that probably immediately come to mind as the first few guys off the top of my head. But Howell and Uiagalelei and King are probably your 3 headliners at this point.
I mean, Sam Howell, we're back to a kind of traditional look ACC here in 2021. I mean, they have to make the championship game to play for the ACC title for him to win it, most likely, right? I mean, he's going to put up numbers in that offense kind of regardless, right? I mean, a bad season will still statistically probably look pretty good on paper.
Well, he has 68 touchdown passes through 2 seasons. And keep in mind, it wasn't a full year last year. I think what stands out about Sam Howell also is pushing the ball downfield. Again, that seems to be one of the new metrics, right, for kind of quarterback success. Isn't just the touchdown to interception ratio, isn't just the completion percentage, but it's the yards per attempt. That kind of, and granted, it's an imperfect stat because you could throw a short pass and a screen go for 30 yards, but it balances itself out generally over the long haul. And just for point of reference, last year, Trevor Lawrence, an all-time great quarterback and the number 1 pick in the draft, averaged 9.4 yards per pass attempt. Sam Howell averaged 10.3. So he was almost a full yard above Trevor Lawrence in terms of pushing the football downfield. And I think that's what potentially stands out about Sam Howell nationally, even amongst some of the other quarterbacks. But I'm telling you, King is a player. He's a playmaker, and I think he's going to come back healthy. I would certainly keep an eye on him and Miami. And maybe you see Miami emerge as a national contender and King be one of the leading reasons. But I think you're talking about some good quarterback play in the ACC.
Yeah, and then, well, I think the league, BJ, as a whole is kind of at a dearth of playmakers as a whole, right? I mean, you had obviously Clemson's had loads of them, but who are the kind of known stars outside of that? Sam Howell's the guy everybody talks about. De'Aaron King was a transfer in to Miami last year, but as a league, I mean, it wasn't all that long ago when you had 4, 5, 6 pretty well-known quarterbacks, pretty well-known offenses that were out there getting it done. Who are the playmakers here for the ACC? And is that something that it's going to take this season to kind of establish who those guys are?
Yeah, I think you do have some guys. I mean, I think Robertson, Jakari Robertson at Wake Forest is a really good player. Zay Flowers at Boston College is a really good player. The name to keep an eye on, though, obviously, is Justin Ross. If he's back healthy and good to go at Clemson, you're talking about a guy that has been as productive as any player in the country. You're talking about a guy that is a superstar, kind of known commodity going back to his true freshman year. And what he did on a national stage. So I think in terms of the playmakers, Justin Ross, assuming he's healthy, and I know everybody's rooting for him, is a guy that really stands out as kind of the go-to guy. And you think about, Clemson, the wide receivers, Amari Rodgers, obviously last year. I think Ross is a guy that is absolutely, 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns when healthy. And the idea, Kevin, of Uiagalelei throwing the ball downfield to Justin Ross, I think is something that worries you if you're an ACC defender.
Yeah, and again, the ACC, we've said this for a couple of years now, BJ, needs somebody other than Clemson to do something, right? It seems like whenever Miami's had that opportunity, they'll lose a key game. Whenever you think maybe it's Virginia Tech, they've lost a key game. Florida State has been down. Georgia Tech has been down. You haven't had a solid number two. I mean, for all the, hey, Alabama's dominating, you have had the Georgias, the LSUs, Florida has played well, Auburn, Texas. You've had a couple of teams that are right there playing consistently well. The ACC, quite frankly, I mean, it took Notre Dame coming in to have that number 2 team last year. Are they any closer to finding a team that can consistently hang in the top 10 to 15 and stay there for most of the season?
I mean, I think it may be North Carolina, right? I mean, that may be who we're looking at. And who knows if that's sustainable over the long haul. Howell's kind of led that along with the playmakers, guys who are getting ready for the NFL draft at running back, at wide receiver. I think a lot of the preseason polls have the Tar Heels maybe in the top 15. I don't know about the top 10. I don't know about that, but obviously Notre Dame was kind of that second team last year in a unique set of circumstances for the ACC. I think when you look at this season, the best bet is probably North Carolina. I would say followed by Miami. I do think NC State, as we've talked about, is going to be really good. Top 15, top 10, maybe a little high in terms of preseason expectations. But I think you have a nice secondary kind of post-Clemson group emerging. Now, like you said, you think about some of the tradition-rich programs in the ACC. What's going on with Georgia Tech? We'll have to see. What's going on with Florida State? We'll have to see. What's going on with Virginia Tech? We'll have to see. But I do think maybe led by North Carolina and Miami, there's a nice group of other contenders.
Quick look at the ACC and who might be some of those high-profile guys to compete for ACC Offensive Player of the Year. We'll come back. We'll talk some more college football. Michael Bennett, Just the Cats Radio, will join us. Kentucky wrapping up their spring. No spring game, but could Kentucky be a contender in the East? We'll talk to him next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are with us. College football always in the news as we've seen spring games come around the last couple of weeks in the SEC. Kentucky, not the case. No spring game for the Wildcats this spring. But joining us here to talk about them as they head into the fall from Just the Cats Radio, Michael Bennett joins us here on 3 and Out. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are y'all doing down in Savannah?
Hey, man, we are doing fantastic. And Kentucky, obviously no spring game, but what did they get accomplished in the spring? I know a lot of people quietly thinking Kentucky might be a little bit better than what they've traditionally done here in the East.
Well, I tell you what, I just had lunch with the head coach, Mark Stoops, and his number 2 guy, Vince Merrill, earlier this week. And listen, they kind of like having that chip on their shoulder, but slowly but surely, a lot of people around the Southeast and beyond are starting to believe in Kentucky when it comes to football. And I have to say, it's making one particular coach at Kentucky not too terribly happy because he's, been the king bee for so many years, and that's John Calipari. But Kentucky is quietly, over the past 2 or 3 seasons, maybe a little longer, putting some great talent there. And we keep recruiting great for Kentucky. It's obviously not like what Georgia, Alabama does, but we're getting better day by day, and it's exciting up here.
So with that said, what are the expectations for this season?
Well, if you asked Mark Stoops or Vince Morrow, they're going to say, listen, we want to get to the championship game. That's their goal, and they've had that goal for the past 3 or 4 seasons, and they almost reached it a couple of years ago, and they feel like they got the talent, and not just the talent up front, but the talent in the back, and they go deep as well. And that's the one thing they've been really trying to cue in on is making sure not only do they have a first team, but they have a second team and a third team. So they're getting deep with the talent.
Michael Bennett, Just the Cats Radio, joining us here on 3 and Out. Now, obviously no spring game, but what did they find out about their quarterback situation? I know that was something that's been a back and forth pretty much this entire offseason.
Yeah, we've got 3 fantastic options. We've got Joey Gatewood, obviously the transfer out of Auburn that came to Lexington last season. We've got the freshman coming in, Bo Allen, who's your prototype quarterback who is right there. His backyard is his home of Lexington. And then, of course, we got another transfer coming from Penn State, Ryan Levis, and he hasn't gotten on campus yet, but he's going to be able to give a run as far as who's going to be starting quarterback. But quite honestly, if you ask me right now, I think the lean, without them really telling you, is going to be towards Joey Gatewood. So that former Auburn quarterback is really lightening up this past spring from what I've heard and from what I've learned from people on the inside. Yeah, we didn't get to have a spring game. Our stadium is set up for the largest COVID site, so they couldn't necessarily let anybody come into the stadium without having to take everything, breaking everything down and then bringing it back up. But anyway, that's kind of where we are.
You've seen Kentucky be really physical the last couple of years running the football. Do you expect that to continue this fall?
Very much so. And you know what? We've got a brand new offensive coordinator. He was a quarterback's coach at the Los Angeles Rams. His name is Liam Cohen. And from what I hear from all the offensive guys, they're excited. And that's the reason we've gotten another transfer out of Nebraska, who's our slot receiver, Wandel Robinson. He was one of the top transfers in the country. He chose Kentucky because of Liam Cohen and the potential of his offense. Yes, we got one of the great running backs, I think, and it's been rated by Pro Football Focus as the best running back in the country that's coming back to play another season out of Christopher Rodriguez. And so we're going to have a balanced attack, and on top of it all, we've got some great young receivers, plus we've got some tight ends, which I expect to see a lot of play and catch us some passes as well.
We're talking with Michael Bennett, Just the Cats Radio, and obviously you talked about the way this team is stacked up, and I know on your site you had Vince Morrow, associate head coach, saying, look, we're starting to get negative recruiting towards us. Guys saying, look, they're loaded. These guys, this coach may be going somewhere else. This coach may be going somewhere else. Is that where they're at? He goes, I used to say that about Alabama and Ohio State, not Kentucky football. Are they really at that point where I know 2022 looks good in recruiting, but where other schools are starting to actually say, hey, Kentucky's got some dudes there on the roster.
Well, I'll give you an example. Last weekend, we were after these two twins, the Wade twins, against Tennessee. They're out of Springfield, Tennessee, and they chose Kentucky. Then we got probably the highest ranking recruit we've had ever in the history of Kentucky, and that's a young man by the name of Goodwin out of Charleston, Indiana, just outside of Louisville. And he was choosing between Kentucky, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and chose Kentucky. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch that Vince Marrow said that the other day on the show. But on the other hand, I'm glad he did, because I want that kind of confidence. And that's what's selling these recruits to come to Kentucky, because of that confidence.
You've seen Coach Stoops have a lot of success. What's been the biggest key? Has it been recruiting?
Oh, absolutely. And let's be honest here. It's not that difficult to recruit when you are the basketball coach at Kentucky. We have a rich history of basketball. It's easy to recruit when you're at Georgia, Clemson, or Alabama, because you've got a rich history of football. Kentucky, we haven't had that. We don't have that history. I think what Vince Marrow, Mark Stoops, and Brad White have done at Kentucky to be able to bring a team that was coached and just brought down by Joker Phillips a few years back, and to really revitalize to where people are equally, some even more excited about football than basketball, is an incredible job. So, yeah, I credit to definitely all the recruiting.
Michael Bennett joining us here on 3 Now. So, obviously, recruiting has gone well. What's it going to take, though, to get Kentucky over the hump? As you said, they were within a game a couple years ago. It seems like they've gotten some fanfare in years past and maybe run into just a game or two that caused them some trouble. What's it going to take in your estimation to get Kentucky there and get them to where Mark Stoops and company think they're going to be?
It's going to be consistency. They just got to play every game with the same consistency. Every game that a different player might have to step up. It's going to be a healthy team on top of it all as well. You know, a year before last, we had a wide receiver that ended up being our quarterback. So that tells you right there, we were a little thin from that standpoint, but we lost 3 quarterbacks in one season. When does that ever happen? So I think you just got to have a little luck on your side with the healthiness of your players and consistent play. Go out there and dominate the line. And I tell you what, that's the one thing that Mark Stoops and company have been able to do, is recruit on that offensive line. And of course, he is a defensive-minded coach. I think he's done a phenomenal job on the defense. You just look at the NFL draft this coming year and look at Jamin Davis, who's going to be one of the first-rounders, one of the top picks in the NFL. You got another guy named Bossman Fat, who's my favorite nickname of all time, Kelvin Joseph. He'll be one of the top picks as well. So as long as we got those things going on, which I'm confident we do, guess what? We're going to turn some heads this year. And if not this year, it's coming soon. And there's going to be some teams that go down that's like, wow, we just got beat by Kentucky.
We've had at least one pundit come on this show and say that Kentucky is the top challenger to Georgia, not Florida. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. You've only had one person say that?
So far, you may be number 2.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, people aren't used to it. It's like saying Georgia's going to beat Kentucky on a consistent basis when it comes to basketball. Yes, it doesn't surprise me, and I'm glad that people still don't beat Kentucky, because the coaching staff loves that. They love to coach against teams that put a chip on their shoulder. They love those locker room notes. They love all that kind of stuff that motivates them, says, you know what? We're going to prove something in the SEC. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Keep doing it. It only motivates this team even more.
Michael, obviously just an eyeballs look a long ways out. It seems like the Wildcats' fate might be sealed or advanced for them in the month of October. Florida, LSU, Georgia, 3 weeks in a row. I mean, obviously that's the season-defining stretch right there.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so tough in the Southeastern Conference. And it seems like poor Kentucky gets the worst draw year in, year out. But, yeah, that's going to be tough in October. But the good news is a lot of those games are going to be in Lexington, and hopefully we're going to have a full packed house up here at Commonwealth Stadium.
Finally, you mentioned Jamin Davis. He's from south of Savannah, getting ready for the draft. What makes him so special? And do you think he's going to go in the first round?
Yeah, I definitely think he's going in the first round. I mean, if you saw the article last week, I believe it was in the Washington Post. I mean, of all places, Washington D.C. is talking about Jamin Davis. What makes him so special is that he's got speed and he's got it between the ears as well. He is a savvy, intelligent, smart football player, and he knows how to play to his strengths, and that's what makes him so good. I love the kid. I mean, last year we had a young man named Chris Oates that was supposed to be the starting guy at linebacker, and unfortunately, he goes down with a stroke of all things at that age, and is unable to play football. So here comes this guy named Jamin Davis, and he just shines, and that's what's needed when you get your chance. Listen, Jamin Davis pulled out all the stops and was able to succeed. I'm excited for him.
Michael Bennett, Just the Cats Radio, joining us here on 3 and Out. Michael, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Good talking to y'all. Y'all have a great afternoon.
Will do. Michael Bennett joining us here on 3 and Out in Kentucky. Okay, BJ, official tally, put it on the big board. We have 2 now who think Kentucky right there behind Georgia, ahead of Florida in the East. And as you said, they've recruited well. I know right now they are a top 10 class for 2022, which you think, well, yeah, they usually recruit pretty well in basketball. No, this is football, a top 10 recruiting class. Now they have to hold on to that, but I know Mark Stoops, it seems like Kentucky trying to go, we talked about this earlier in the week, keeping that consistency with the coaching staff and Mark Stoops, when maybe a lot of people said, well, okay, we've won 7-8 games for a while now. Can we punch through and people getting rested? No, stay the course and see if you can actually break through. Obviously, the month of October going to be the telling tale for them, but where do you see this Kentucky team? Are you as big a believer, obviously, as Michael was when he was on?
I think they have played their way into kind of getting the benefit of the doubt. Do I think they're better than Florida right now? No. Do I think they're better than most teams in the SEC East? Yes. And there's a physicality that has been in place for a couple of years now, offensively and defensively. And I mean, Georgia's had a couple of close games with them. Florida's obviously had some wild games with them. I think you're going to have to be physical when you show up and play Kentucky. They're going to run the football. They're going to be solid and fundamentally sound on the defensive side of the ball. If you want to tell me they're the number 3 team in the East, okay, I think I can buy that. Number 2, I know we're getting off track a little bit, but I've said time and time again, I think we're undervaluing Florida. And I think Florida's a better team, kind of even with the losses, which are significant than people are giving them credit for in my mind. But Coach Stoops has done a really good job. I think sometimes you get so caught up in what's next. Can Kentucky make an SEC that you kind of forget about what's been done? I mean, they don't have a ton of history. They don't have a ton of tradition. You're talking about a team that won 10 games not long ago. You're talking about guys getting ready for the NFL draft. And he mentioned Jamin Davis out of Long County. He's a fantastic football player. He is excellent. He's going to be a star at the next level and a really good chance to be a first-round pick. I know a lot of the mocks we've seen, Kevin, have him going kind of in that 25 to 32, 25 to 35 range. And you never know, but he is a really, really good football player, really fun to watch. And I know Ben likes him because he's kind of that mold, like a Levante David or the speed kind of every down linebackers that can cover the tight end, that can rush the passer. So there's another young man from the 912 to keep an eye on and probably going to hear his name called pretty early in the NFL draft.
Appreciate Michael Bennett joining us here on 3 and Out. Coming up in about 13 minutes, we'll have Jared Binko, athletic director of Georgia Southern, joining us here. Just got word not too long ago they moved the spring game from Saturday to tomorrow, so we'll ask him about that and much more when he joins us at the top of next hour. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett here with you. Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, set to join us at the top of hour number 2, and we'll talk to him. Also, some proposed NFL rules changes out there, or NFL rules changes out there for the. I'm sorry,
not proposed.
I'm just trying to live up to my low expectations here on the show. Christian, I apologize.
Not proposed. They've been passed through there, Kevin.
Okay. So, what is it you want to say?
Oh, I mean, read us on the rundown. You said
I did something astounding. I mean, I do something astounding every day. So,
that's truly astounding. Anybody who knows Kevin, BJ, you can attest to this. There's a lot of times where you're talking to Kevin and you think you're having a conversation, then he'll look up and go, "What?" And it's like after you've been talking to him for like 2 minutes, and you're like, "Oh, okay, wow, he didn't hear anything I just said." He did something even past that. And you guys know I was kind of mad at y'all last week because we had our friend Josh Bertaccini on from Arkansas, and he called Georgia Southern an FCS school, and literally nobody caught it. So I was mad at all of you guys on the show last week, but I'm kind of used to it with Kevin. Right now, Cody, he's told me I can say this. He got a second shot today, and we were talking about it. He said his arm was a little bit sore. He was feeling kind of tired, and we were having a whole conversation about this for 15 minutes. And then Kevin, after 15 minutes, goes, "Oh, you got your second shot today?" Like, what world were you living in?
My world.
Apparently. I mean, BJ, you can back me up on this, right? Kevin just chooses selective hearing, I guess is the best way to put it. If Kevin wants to listen to you, fine. Kevin, I think, is a person when you're having a conversation, instead of listening, you're already thinking about what you want to say. I think that's a fair thing to say about Kevin. But I mean, like, literally, Cody and I were both astounded when Kevin said, "Oh, wow, you got your second shot today?"
Dude, I've been in the car with Kevin on like a multi-hour car ride, and I've been talking for like 45 minutes straight. And I'll look over, and he'll either A, be asleep, or B, he'll just say, "Up, yep." And I'll look at him and go, "What? Like what? That's your response?" So yeah, Kevin. I mean, you have a gift of kind of blending into the moment when someone's talking to you.
Also, have you had him drive you at all?
Yes.
Yeah, how terrifying is that? We were driving the other day to an event, and his driving was so bad. As soon as we got to the destination, I had to get out of the car and throw up. It's just
he literally did. I thought he was just saying that, but
yeah.
he literally did.
It was bad.
On en route to our stop, Cody got out of the car and said, "Excuse me for a minute," and he said it was because of my driving. I'm not buying it, so I drive perfectly fine. That's all I have to say about that. We've got so much more to get to. Do what? Yeah, people calling it. Okay, well, that's fine. We're out of time. Unfortunately, I'll give more time for people to defend me. Later, we've got to step aside, hit the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk to Georgia Southern Athletic Director Jared Binko on the show. Their blue-white game actually now going to be on Friday. He will join us to talk about that and much more when we return. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, also streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well here on the show. A lot to get to here this afternoon, including our conversation with our next guest. He is the athletic director of the Georgia Southern Eagles. Jared Binko joins us here on 3 and Out. Jared, welcome. How are you? He is muted. There we go.
See, y'all are trying to keep me in check here, make sure I'm paying attention. So, no, things are going well. How y'all doing?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. And I know, obviously, a lot of folks excited about the spring game coming up. I was scheduled for Saturday. I know just the forecast looks terrible. And now you guys have moved it to Friday. Let folks know all of what's going on, the very latest with that.
Yeah, so we moved it to 7:30 on Friday. It was interesting this week. You trying to look at long-term forecasts more than 5 to 7 days out, and it obviously kept getting worse and worse. And we thought we had a pocket of time from 10 to 1 on Saturday. We were holding out hope for, and it looked actually pretty good this morning. Is a change in the forecast and got a lunchtime forecast, getting a lot of those over the break, and just say, listen, it's not worth it. And then the challenge concurrently is trying to make sure you get officials that were going to be here on Saturday, coming a lot of them from out of the region. If we could get some people here for Friday. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that went into it. It's sometimes people are thinking, well, just sitting on their hands and maybe just kind of waiting. And it's really not that. There's just a lot of logistics behind the scene. And you want to try to honor the date of the game if you can. It worked out we couldn't do it. So
Friday Night Lights, though, that should be pretty fun. Talk about that opportunity.
Yeah. Friday Night Lights are going to be great. And obviously we've already said the first game at home this fall is the Friday Night Lights. And we had the new LED lights. We got them last year. So, no, man, I think it's supposed to be a really pretty night. And it's really going to be a good chance, obviously, for our guys to get out there and show the hard work they've been doing this spring. And it's been interesting. You go to practice and you see the scrimmages. The offense is really done well. And I think it's been a back and forth. Sometimes during the week, the defenses have had the advantage, but the offense has been looking good. So it's going to be a fun night here in Statesboro. And obviously Friday Night Lights in April, are a little different, but it's a good different, right? So.
Certainly, Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, joining us here on 3 and Out. I know it moves to Friday. What are your plans for fans, and are you still going to be coaching one of the teams?
Yeah, so we're going to be coaching. I'll share with you. I had my feelings hurt a little bit that our president was picked first before me. I had to tweet at one of our defense coordinator, Scott Sloan, and say, kind of use the emoji like hand on the face, and then kind of laughing because I was joking with our president yesterday. I said, he has a music background and a performance background. I said, I'll be frank with you. I got my feelings hurt that I have an athletic background and you got picked before me to coach a team. And so he thought it was pretty funny. So, but no, for tomorrow, we actually have our Eagle Club event tomorrow in Statesboro. We've been on an 18-city tour or 18-stop tour. And so we have one tomorrow at 5:30. So fans are open to that. It's our Statesboro and Bullitt County Club. And then obviously we've got the game at 7:30. So it'll be a great family night. We're anticipating great weather. And really, I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for fans to come back into Pulse and enjoy some good football. So
what is your coaching philosophy?
So it's going to be aggressive. We're going to be dialing up some stuff. It's not going to be, hey, we're just going to run 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, it depends on how much freedom they give us. Now, listen, I'm not going to be like some coaches, and I was at Mississippi State with Mike Leach, has a little index card like this. I want the whole sheet. I want 3 sheets. I want a binder of plays. We're just going to dial them up. It's kind of like Battleship. You pick an A, 12, A. I'm just going to dial it up. Hey, that's, and so if Don Marrero is calling the defense and he expects a traditional, run on the first down, he's going to be surprised, right? And the same thing, it's 4 downs. We're not kicking field goals either. So I just hope he's prepared. I hope his team is prepared because we're going to be very aggressive. So
you going to break out a little under center triple option for the fans?
Listen, we might have some double and triple reverses. I mean, there's all types of stuff that we might be drawing. We might be taking the old Coach Russell days of drawing things in the sand. We might just draw some things in the ground and just try to sandball a little bit. So anyway, I'm excited about it. I just want to be. I'm going to be the second pick in the draft. And so I'm going to be one of those stories 30 for 30 that overcame the obstacles and being overlooked. So.
Very good. Obviously, it's been an unprecedented stretch for college athletics. As you look look ahead on the horizon, kind of what are some of the plans for summer, for fall, and how much of that is obviously still fluid right now?
Well, I mean, I think you have to, obviously, Russ, a lot of it still is fluid. It's a lot more optimistic and a lot more optimism than 12 months ago. And so we're preparing, like a lot of schools and our peers in the conference and across the country, to have a full stadium next year. And so I'm excited. I know our student athletes and our fans and alumni are excited because, this is where we all have always been, quite frankly, this time of year. And obviously last year we're in a different spot. And so, I kind of make it, BJ, it's kind of like going from being on your heels to being aggressive and proactive. And so I'm excited because we're looking at other ways to generate more activities in Paulson. We've already started looking at concerts and other things to drive that fan experience, but also to our community engagement and efforts. And so it's a lot of fun to be thinking about getting back to what we all, I guess, would deem normal before COVID. And so, everything right now is a full go. And obviously, if things come up and we have to make adjustments, we'll do it. But I mean, heck, we did that last year, and we handle all those adjustments. And I'm really proud of our staff and everyone involved, because our coaches and student athletes bought in. So, in many ways, we're battle tested from the standpoint of being able to make changes on the fly. And so now we're just approaching it like, hey, listen, everything's a go. And if something comes up, we'll audible. If not, we're gonna be ready to go.
I was going to say, you been there just a little bit more than a year, and I think we had you on right before you officially came to Statesboro, and you came in the middle of the whole COVID era. Like your whole tenure has been obviously nothing but figuring out how things are going on the fly. How has this past year been for you? From, are we going to be able to have fans there? What do we need to do for our student athletes? Safety, obviously, money wise for funding the program. Like, how has this been for you finally getting the AD job, and it's been anything but stepping into a what would be deemed a normal situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kevin, I would, as a person of faith, as a man of faith, I don't, God doesn't make mistakes. And so I shared from the get-go that, we're going to either use this as a growth opportunity or use this as a chance to make excuses. And so I have to also live by that as well. And so it's really, for us, it's been an opportunity where I would just share with you, the first year, a lot of collaboration that probably wouldn't have taken place across campus and the community and quite frankly, all across Eagle Nation took place because of the pandemic. And so in many ways, it actually sped up or allowed us to grow relationships at a quicker pace. But no, you always learn about yourself in the face of adversity. And I think what you find out is there's a lot of resiliency. I'm really proud of our student athletes for following a plan. We had a lot of people that put a lot of time, effort, and energy, from our doctors and our president on down. And so the plan was executed. So I think, Kevin, it also instills a lot of confidence. We got the right people on the bus. And really, when we're going to have some fun times, obviously coming up, it makes you celebrate those probably a little more, right? So we had a women's tennis team that won the Sun Belt tournament this past weekend, and we're going to celebrate our successes. And so, everything from COVID, and there's a lot of week by week and a lot of ominous forecasts of what's coming. When you have those fun moments, those wins, those celebrations on and off the field, man, you almost want to embrace them even more, just because, and sometimes this past year, they're few and far between. So,
obviously, a tradition of excellence in Statesboro. How special are those championships?
Well, they're always special, and I think I think what I have probably a greater appreciation for, guys, being in this role is one of the best things of my role is a chance to get to know our student athletes better, and to see them and get to see them on and off the field and get to know who they are and their families. And you're vested more in people, right, in this role, which I love. Right? I love being vested more with our student athletes and coaches and staff and all internal and external constituents. And so when you see those student athletes that you've gotten to know on a deeper level have success, it's like family, right? It's like people it's like your friends. And so there's more of a sense of just excitement and gratification that comes with seeing people be successful. And so it's just a cool feeling. It's hard to explain, but there's just a synergy in this tie-in that I haven't felt, in quite a while, just because I haven't been in this role. So,
Jared Binko joining us, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, here on 3 and Out. And again, Georgia Southern spring game moved from Saturday to tomorrow night there at Paulson Stadium due to upcoming weather. I know one of the things that had to get moved was the barbecue cook-off, and I know I follow you on social media, and you make me hungry. Like every couple of days, you'll just drop a, hey, hitting the smoker, hitting the Blackstone grill, and I mean, were you banned from competing in that thing? Is that
No, but I'll tell you this. You know that there's that old song. I think Tracy Lawrence had. You find out who your friends are, and this barbecue competition has brought out some unseemly feelings people have had towards my skills, or lack thereof. And so I'll share. I don't have it now. Someone took the liberty of getting into my office the other day and putting a third place trophy on my mantle, and I don't know. Some people say that's probably too high. I think myself, people are underselling a little bit and underestimating me. So, by the way, I don't know where Ben's at. I just got on, but I know Ben would have my back and give me the benefit of the doubt because we've talked before. But there's a lot of people that look at themselves as a Bobby Flay type like individual, and I have to see it, and so I know what I can do. I'm not by any means a pit master. But some of these folks that they're talking a lot, I just haven't seen them back it up. We have one person on our staff that claims they've won a championship and the trophy's about 3 inches like my son's soccer trophy. And I just, it's hard to give credence to that when someone has a little trophy. If you're going to have a trophy, it needs to be like 3 foot, 3 feet, tall. And it's just hard to give credence to somebody that's a barbecue champion with a little league trophy. So,
We've asked you about philosophy. What's your barbecuing philosophy then after that?
Well, I mean, listen, you got to cut all the noise out. You got to remain, humble. And so it just matters what you cook. It's low and slow, right? And, there's going to be some people that want to wow with all these secret spices and all this stuff that they're talking about and fancy grills and stuff. At the end of the day, it's the finished product. So the philosophy is the same old. Just keep doing what you're doing. We got a lot of folks that want to, really bring the heat and try all this stuff and let them try it out. But at the end of the day, what really, in a serious note, excites me is the chance to feed our fans and really thank them for hanging with us all year long. But, again, it's like, you go to a food truck alley and you see all these food trucks and usually the ones in the longest line, maybe there's a connotation the food's good. Well, there's a couple of folks I'm interested to see how long the lines are because, there's going to be some people, like when you're in a buffet, you just skip over that section. I used to do the salad bar, just skip over the salad bar, right? Well, you go into the meats. And so there's going to be some people that are probably going to have their feelings hurt, but it's okay, right? Because we're in it for the right reasons to thank our fans. So
absolutely. Where did that? Hey, I'm 100% on you, man, because you make some stuff that looks good. Everything I've seen puts Lincoln Riley stuff to shame. I don't know if you saw that picture.
Yeah, it's just I saw that, and my first thought was, wow, that looks dry. And but listen, who am I to question it? But I will share with you when you're out in Oklahoma and I was in Arkansas for a while, which is obviously borders Oklahoma. It's some serious brisket people you get out in the Midwest. And so he's kind of going to the top of the penthouse and you're putting out brisket photos. So you better make sure you've got it looking good. And when I came out, I was like, man, that thing looks dry. Anyway.
Where did that passion kind of start? Because I know, AD, and you're talking low and slow, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours, like running the university athletic program. Where do you get 10, 12 hours to sneak that in?
Well, you don't. So what you have to do is, and I get made fun of, but I've got a pellet grill. And so pellet grills to me were a game changer because when I had a charcoal grill and before, the whole green eggs, I just, I just didn't have the time. And so a pellet grill, maybe it's cheating. They can call it one, but to me, it works great because I can put it on and it does all the rest. Right. And so to me, that's what I do. I can put it on, go do what I have to do, and then come back and check on later. But most of it's honestly on the weekends. And this spring, I've kind of taken a hiatus a little bit because we've got so much going on. But obviously, after our spring sports wrap up, this summer is going to be back on a crash course because you got to get ready for the fall. So.
Got to get ready for the tailgating out there as well. So once again, Jared, let folks know what time all the activities are starting.
Yeah, so 7:30. Obviously, is our spring game tomorrow night. And we'll have an Eagle Club event as well at 5:30, which we look forward to seeing all the Eagle Nation at both events. And it's going to be a great opportunity, great night, great weather, and obviously leading to a great weekend. Now, Saturday is obviously not looking great. We don't have any other really sporting events at Impact, which is a blessing compared to the week before, the last couple of weeks. But, yeah, tomorrow night's going to be a beautiful night to come out and see the team. You'll see a lot of excitement both on offense and defense. And if you stick around to the fourth quarter, the two honorary coaches, they're not saying the next Vince Lombardi's, but we got some pretty good prospects coming in to coach. So
Hey, I'm on your side. I think you can stick it to the president of the school. But I'm on Team Binko for this
Hey,
one.
if I don't show out, then I'm not coming back on the show anymore. Okay, so because I won't have any dignity left, so I've got to at least dial some things up. So
Hey, well, we know you got a lot going on. You got to get your game plan ready for tomorrow night. But we appreciate you coming on and joining us. Thanks so much.
appreciate it, guys. Hail Southern.
Appreciate it. Jared Binko joining us here on 3 and Out, the athletic director there with Georgia Southern. And again, a lot going on around the university. And BJ, folks, forget he came in, I think, in late March, right when everything was getting shut down as the athletic director at Georgia Southern. And kind of his first kind of duties were like, all right, how do I get the sports back going again? Or what do we need to do for the safety of our student athletes? Kind of a different task there, but they were the only school outside Alabama to play, 13 games last year. They had fans at Paulson pretty much the entirety of the season. And obviously, as he said, everyone looking forward to going back to a maybe more semblance of normal here when we get to fall 2021.
Yeah, has obviously had a very challenging, set of circumstances to deal with, and has done a really good job. But looking forward to the spring game tomorrow night. And Kevin, we'll see when that barbecue event is. I know. Ben desperately wants to be a part of that.
Oh, well, why wouldn't you? I want to be. I want to be a part of eating it, not necessarily the cooking of it. But yeah, I definitely won't want to miss that as well. And I know they're going
to. Ben's called me a couple of times after the show, and we've had Jared on and said, dude, we got to go get the barbecue. We got to get the barbecue. I said, we'll do it. We'll get up there and get some.
So I'm sure it's going to be set up for a big time, maybe later this fall. And then they were wanting to do it in conjunction with the spring game. But as you said, the forecast for Saturday, less than favorable. So they moved the spring game up to Friday night. We've got much more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out. Again, thanks to Jared Binko for joining us here on the program. BJ, some new rule changes in the National Football League on the way. I think one that a lot of fans will notice initially will be they relaxed the rules on numbers. So now tight ends, DBs, linebackers, running backs, wide receivers can actually wear single digits. So you could get a linebacker wearing 2 or something like that. That's always kind of a little different. So before it was based on what position you could play, was kind of the grouping of numbers you could have. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Also looking at an experiment on the onside kick to try to make it at least a little bit easier for a team trying an onside kick to try to recover it, limiting the number of guys you can have within 25 yards of the ball on that extra point, and or on the the onside kick. And one that I think is interesting is the replay officials are going to be able to collab with the officials on the field so that if there's an obvious missed call, they can help with getting it right. So you won't have to throw a challenge flag. Coaches can still do that, but on a certain call where, say, hey, Matt Ryan throws one to Julio Jones, they call Julio Jones out of bounds. It's clear, one-shot camera angle. Oh, no, definitely in. The replay official can hop in there and say, look, he was clearly in bounds. You got it wrong. Set the ball. Let's go. And not have a 2, 3, 4 minute stoppage of play while they figure it out. No challenge. Just the guy in the booth watching the angles is like, nope, you missed it. It's clear as day. Go, keep moving. I kind of like that.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the one thing that stands out to me is the fact that you're going to have big guys with little numbers. And I like that, right? When you have like a defensive tackle wearing number 5 or number 9 or something.
Tackle.
I mean,
not defensive tackle. DBs.
Okay, so linebackers. Well, then that's very disappointing.
So I guess that counts as a pseudo big guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I misinterpreted that then. That's disappointing. That I'm not happy with any of this. I mean, I thought for a second we were going to have the defensive lineman wearing 7 and 9. I mean, I do think for a linebacker that's cool, right? Like for a linebacker, that's really cool. For a safety, but I guess that'll be I want to add defensive linemen to the mix. I mean, the onside kick stuff, I guess, because it is kind of hopeless. But isn't the whole point of an onside kick like you're in a desperate situation and it's supposed to be really, really difficult?
Well, I guess the point that they're making is they had already hurt the kicking units because you have a limited number of people that you're allowed to have on each side of the ball for the kicking team. So now they're limiting that number for the return team. So it was really skewed towards the return team. I think only 3 teams actually only 3 recoveries last year on onside kicks, and 2 of them were from Younghoe Koo. So the rules had really skewed it away from having any chance whatsoever of recovering an onside kick.
I mean, I get it. I understand it. I mean, I do think every now and then you got to sort of refresh things and look at that. If you would have asked me kind of before today, is changing the onside kick a kind of leading priority for NFL rules, I would say no, but I understand it.
And then the numbers, Kevin, it's running backs, wide receivers, corners, linebackers, tight ends, fullbacks, safeties can go 1 through 49 now. It's still 50 through 79 for offensive linemen, right? And defensive linemen, I believe, is 50 through 79 and 90 through 99 for what they can wear. Yeah, so sorry, BJ, no single digits for the big fellas.
Yeah, I hate that. Okay, so we have the tight ends. I was thinking defensive ends. Okay, well, I want my tight ends wearing like number 8. Okay, that's what I want.
Well, I want my excuses, right? And we had somebody write in on second down. They were like, well, this is going to be so hard for the announcers. I was like, literally, announcers do it in college football every week. They'll be fine.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Just tell me who.
Tom Brady, calm the hell down.
As long as the guy wearing number 3 is actually the guy wearing number 3, like it's fine. Like, what announcer's having problems with this? Seriously,
none.
Exactly. But I do I do think it is kind of neat. Like, since they've done it in college, like, have you noticed? Like, last year was the first year guys could wear 0, and it was never like a receiver or a DB. Like, the guy that wants 0 on like every team is like 6'8", 320 pounds. Like, I want 0.
The homie Javonte Middleton's rocking 0
he is one, but I'm thinking outside of that, it's always like
there's
a D tackle.
There's a couple running backs in the SoCon that are wearing number 0, but I get what you're saying. But We're talking about Gary Sheffield being a boomer yesterday. How about this boomer quote from old Tom Brady yesterday? Good luck trying to block the right people now. Going to make for a lot of bad football.
Wow.
Tom Brady, man, come on. Go eat your kale.
Are you trying to compare Tom Brady to Gary Sheffield?
Yes, like both of their statements were very similar in the fact that they made you sound old.
Hey, somebody's got to be holding it down for the old guys. Yes.
Do they? Is it really going to be hard to block the right guy, Kevin? Like you said, instead of saying you got to block number 56, you got to block number 6. Is that such an astronomical difference that it's really going to affect an NFL offensive lineman? Is it?
No, I mean, I don't.
You just wanted to defend Tom Brady.
I want to defend Tom Brady.
Yeah, why do you want to defend Tom Brady so bad?
Does he need defending?
It seems like he does.
I don't think so. I just like old guys like to complain about rules. That's what we do. Why are you changing on me? What we have is working.
You like complaining about stuff. You like World War II documentaries, and you like cooking barbecue.
Yelling at clouds and telling people to go away and get off my lawn.
Yeah, you like smoking meat.
Who doesn't?
Young people mostly.
And again, I think that's a good step. The one you kind of glossed over there was the replay stuff. I think that's one that, to me, speeds the game up.
Oh, yeah.
All right, because you don't have to sit there and go, oh, man. I mean, if it's clear as day, why even stop to review it if a guy's already been looking at it?
If you call it a catch, you can see the ball's touching the ground. Instead of having to stop in a replay, the guy can just be like, hey, dude, you missed that. It was incomplete. Let's go ahead and go. And then if the coach wants to challenge it after that, feel free to challenge it. But if we can all clearly see it's incomplete, or a running back, or usually it's with quarterbacks, right, where they take a low snap and the knee touches the ground, but they don't catch it. If you can clearly see it on TV, you can just, hey, his knee was down. He's down to the 17.
I'm all for stuff that keeps the game moving. I'm not necessarily in favor of speeding games up because I feel like, hey,
there's a difference between speeding it up and keeping it moving.
With prices going up, I don't want less football or less baseball or less basketball for my money. But it really bothers me, like in the stand, because it breaks the momentum of everything. When it's like games going, everybody's nuts. It's like 5 minutes, everybody just sit down while we review it. It just sucks the air out of the room, and it just kills the momentum of the game. So anything that can keep the game moving, I'm in favor of, especially if, like you said, it's clear as day. Hey, because I think people in the era of replay get mad and like think officials take this personally. Like, no, the official's like, hey, if I missed it, just say I missed it and let's keep moving. Like,
you are out there trying to officiate a game, BJ, with guys who are 6'7", weigh 300 pounds and run 4.2s, and you're trying to like differentiate minuscule things. You're gonna miss some stuff. If umps in Major League Baseball miss stuff where nobody's moving and they can't get it right, NFL referees don't stand a chance. I think this is fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this makes sense, and I do agree with Kevin. I don't necessarily like we've seen with baseball. You know, I've talked about the extra inning stuff, just magically creating kind of events that speed the game up. But I do think when you can speed up kind of logistical stuff like this, yes, make it easier. It makes sense.
One thing that nobody wants sped up is the draft, because we love the draft. And it's coming up a week from today. The first round, we'll officially get to hear Trevor Lawrence going to the Jags, BJ, and more. But what about some of the other questions heading into round number 1? Anthony Trace, Pro Football Focus. He will join us when we come back. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. Glad to be here with you on this Thursday. We are 1 week away, BJ, from the NFL draft. Round number 1. Joining us here from PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, to join us and talk about that draft. Anthony Trace joins us here on 3 and Out. Anthony, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. Where does this draft begin for you? Obviously, we kind of know 1 and 2. Feel like we know 49ers going quarterback. Where do you think the draft intrigue kind of begins here a week from today?
Yeah, man, it's definitely with that 3rd overall pick, just because, we still don't have a really good read as to who that pick's really going to be. The betting markets are now starting to swing a little bit more into Mac Jones's favor. But as we've seen over the last week, that can deteriorate pretty quickly. I'm still in the camp that I think the 49ers are going to take Justin Fields. It just makes too much sense. I mean, Mac Jones needs the 49ers. That is his ideal team fit. But as far as the 49ers' best fit, it's Justin Fields because he can open up the offense. But, whether they take one or the other, that's really going to dictate how the rest of the draft unfolds, because I think if they do take Mac Jones with that 3rd overall pick, I think Atlanta's going to get a lot of interest for that 4th overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a team maybe like Denver try and call up and see what they can do to get that selection, just because he's a little bit more of a talented passer, and I think a lot of teams recognize that. So I think that's where the draft really all kind of starts.
And Anthony, if that does indeed play itself out and the Falcons have the pick at 4 with Justin Fields off the board, how valuable, especially for folks listening here that are Falcons fans, does that pick become, given that essentially outside of quarterback, you have the number 1 pick at the draft at every other position?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly valuable. I think, they would have big interest in that. And I think if they did get blown away by an offer, they'd have to take it. And I know Kyle Pitts, you watch him sometimes and it's like, man, we're really going to pass up on this guy for more draft picks. Yes, 100% of the time, even though he's probably going to be a fantastic tight end. He really is a unicorn. Everybody says he is. He really is that type of person. He can go out, be press man on the outside. You just don't see tight ends do that on a regular basis like he did at Florida this past season. And they should be looking to trade out of that pick. Now, if they did not do that restructure with Matt Ryan's contract, I would say 10 times out of 10, they should probably take a quarterback. But, they're pretty much stuck with him for at least the next couple of years. So, that it would be kind of hard to not take advantage of that rookie deal on the quarterback there. But, first things first, they should be looking to trade out of that pick. But if they don't get blown away by an offer, no one's really offering, a king's ransom for it. It's obviously not the end of the world because you get Kyle Pitts there. So they're really in a good situation there. Them and the Cincinnati Bengals, they could not be more grateful that this class is rich in quarterbacks.
We get accustomed to, obviously, mock drafts and kind of talking points. How unpredictable do you think this first round could be? And I don't necessarily just mean with the top 7-8 picks, but could we see some kind of unforeseen picks through the mid portion of the first round?
Oh, for sure. I still think it's going to be a very surprising NFL draft. I mean, even last year, there was just so much unknown going into it just because, with the COVID kind of hitting right before that, we still got the NFL scouting combine in, which was huge because teams still got to meet with these players. I think we're going to see, more unknown here. We're entering the NFL draft with more unknown, and I think we're going to see a lot of surprises, especially with the quarterback situation, the wide receiver situation, the tackle situation. Those 3 positions are just absolutely loaded. And it's going to be interesting to see, what that kind of second position, when that run starts, because then I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some movement because teams getting afraid their guy might get off the board. So I'm expecting some more trades and I'm expecting a lot of more surprises there. And I wouldn't be surprised, those teams sitting in the back half of the first round, there's probably going to be some talented, players to fall back there. Caleb Farley's the first one to come to mind. He's kind of become an afterthought now because of the whole medical history. He might end up, down in the 20s somewhere when he, about a month ago, he was sitting there probably going to be the 10th overall pick. And if he didn't have the medical history, he would be up there. And so teams are probably going to get some good value. And I think some teams at the same time might make some mistakes, or just a rash decision, hurry up, trade up and give up more capital. And so I'm excited for it. I'm expecting chaos for sure.
And we talked about the Falcons pick at 4 and the Bengals sitting there at 5. Could that be where the chaos starts if, as you said, the Falcons don't go quarterback? What if they pass on Kyle Pitts for Penei Sewell to help keep their quarterback upright and try to maximize his potential for the next 2 years? How does that throw the draft into another spin if they take the tackle off the board?
Yeah, I think it definitely would as far as the tackle situation goes with those teams that were kind of circling the tackles. I think Los Angeles at 13 would start to get pretty nervous for sure, because then Rashawn Slater is probably likely to come off the board sooner, especially with Carolina there. Their offensive line outside of Taylor Moton is really, really bad. But with Cincinnati and Miami there, they would pretty much be locked in with Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase. And so if that situation were to transpire, I think we'd see a lot of movement just because of the whole tackle situation. Even though it is a very rich class, there is still a little bit of a drop-off after those top 2 to 3 guys.
Who's the best defensive prospect in this draft?
Yeah, and this one's a tough one. You have a case to make with Micah Parsons. On the field, he is incredibly talented, probably the best off-ball linebacker prospect we've seen since Luke Kuechly. But to really warrant him being the first defensive player taken, he's going to have to produce like Luke Kuechly or like a Bobby Wagner type. He's going to have to generate that kind of value. That's a pretty tall task, kind of ask for. So I would kind of assume Patrick Surtain, and I still think Caleb Farley's up there as well, despite the injury history. I mean, he got cleared at the medical combine in Indianapolis, and they literally do an MRI over every inch of the body. And so if he got cleared there, and his trainer down in Florida, Pete Bonrito, says he's good to go, I trust that word. He just has that frame, 6'2", 207 pounds. He's got the length, and he's got the makeup speed for sure. The dude can run at 40 in under 4.3 seconds. And the production to back it up, he was a true lockdown guy against stiff competition back in 2019. With Patrick Surtain, he's probably not the kind of athlete that Caleb Farley is, but he's just a press technician, the most experienced press corner over the last few years, and he's just been exceptional out of it. He really kind of molded his craft this past season, was the highest graded cornerback in all of college football. And he did that playing, getting put out on an island more than anyone. So I would say the 2 corners and then Micah Parsons, those would probably round out my top 3 defensive prospects.
Anthony, the lack of the combine this year, has that changed scouting boards, given the fact that you have a number of guys in the draft pool who didn't play this year in college football, who opted out? No combine on top of that. Has that changed draft boards one way or another, not having some of those things or having some of those things happen that wouldn't normally take place in a given year?
Oh, absolutely. I would 100% agree with that, just because, you look at the whole combine process. The most important things are the interviews and the medicals. We got the medicals done. For at least the select few, if I recall correctly, only about 150, and then a few others were invited to Indianapolis to get the medical checks, even though there's about 300 that usually get invited on a yearly basis to the combine. And then the interviews, they're just getting that face-to-face interaction. Teams really value that. And so I do think it kind of threw them off for a loop. And for some of those players that did opt out, like the first one that comes to mind, like a Javon Holland of Oregon. He's a safety slot corner. He didn't play this past season, but he was successful in 2018 and 2019. That really does not help his case that he did not, have that fresh tape. Jamie Newman, quarterback, he's supposed to be in that pro-style offense in Georgia. He coming over from Wake Forest. He opted out before the season began. And he really hurt his draft stock, especially with the bad Senior Bowl. So, some of these players, that weren't the Penei Sewells, the Jamar Chases that did opt out in 2020, I think it did kind of hurt him a little bit. And as far as the combine goes, not having, again, that interaction, I do think, some of the old traditional minds that are running some of these NFL teams, it definitely threw them off. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything transpires.
Jacksonville is going to take Lawrence at 1. The rest of the way, I wanted to ask you a philosophical question. This is a team that has clear weaknesses, but also is building a foundation. Do you draft for need, or do you go best player available the rest of the way after Lawrence if you're the Jags?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the first 2 rounds, you could probably attack need. And once you get out into round 3, it's always best player available in my view. And with Jacksonville, they're a team that makes me really nervous just because the way they spit in free agency really wasn't all that responsible. They had more money than anybody. They ended up tagging Cam Robinson, who has been the lowest graded left tackle since he entered the league. And then they gave a questionable amount to safety Rayshawn Jenkins, who were expecting to get a very, very cheap deal. and just the rest of the way. I found fascinating was that before free agency really began, Urban Meyer came out and was vocal about how they needed to really improve the run game and they needed to improve the defensive line. And they did not attack the defensive line at all whatsoever in free agency. So I'm afraid they're going to come out and they're going to just throw everything, all that other draft capital early on, to those positions that really aren't the most valuable. And so instead of trying to fulfill some of the needs, wide receiver could still get better, even though they signed Marvin Jones. The secondary still needs some work. I think those would be, bigger priorities for them, but I would expect them to go defensive line. But as far as the philosophical question, I think for any team, it should be need. And for the first 2 rounds within reason, the guys that are picking towards the back half of the second round could be a different question, or even earlier in the third round, depending on the draft class. But typically once you get into the third round, it should always be best player available.
What's kind of your read on Urban Meyer going into the draft? Obviously, this is not something we've seen him do a lot of before. What's kind of your thought on what we'll see from Jacksonville and Urban Meyer kind of doing this for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm pretty nervous for Trevor Lawrence just because, the early returns have not been great. I mean, you look at kind of what the Jacksonville Jaguars did in free agency, stack it up to what the New York Jets did, with Robert Saleh coming in there as the head coach. I really liked what they did in free agency. I mean, they went out and got a true, difference maker at wide receiver with Corey Davis, who was one of the 10 highest graded players at the position last year. Got a fantastic edge defender in Carl Lawson. Got LaMarcus Joyner too, who's moving him back to his natural position of safety instead of instead of playing the slot like Las Vegas did the last couple of years, where he's really not that good, but he's a fantastic safety. And then they brought back another safety, Marcus May, who's one of the 5 best coverage safeties over the last couple of years. I thought they had a great free agency. Can't say that at all about Jacksonville. And that kind of makes me question how things are kind of roll out in the draft. And that's definitely one of the big things I'm going to watch is, what does Jacksonville do, after Trevor Lawrence, because that's going to give me a pretty good read as to what to expect over the next few years.
Focus.com, our guest here on 3 Now, 1 week away, and we'll know where it falls following Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson there in the draft. Anthony, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Anthony Trace, PFF, ProFootballFocus.com, our guest here on 3 Now. We'll come back with more all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett here with you. BJ, you know we love when athletes get salty on the show. And last night, Lucas Sims, former Atlanta Brave out of the Gwinnett area, former first-round pick by the Atlanta Braves, by the way, was with the Reds. And the Reds and Diamondbacks are playing. Obviously, had a cold streak go through the Northeast. You saw the Braves playing pretty cold looking last night. Well, it was raining and freezing cold rain in Cincinnati, and Lucas Sims was not having it. And was like, why are we playing? And threw the ball out. Like he said, hey, nope, need a new ball. The ref throws him a ball. He throws it immediately out and does this like 4 or 5 times before the ref's finally like, all right, that's enough. If you get a chance to check the video out of this, it is amazing. And I've never seen a pitcher do that where he's like, give me a ball. Doop, throw it out. Give me another one. Come on. Nope, not playing with that one either. I'm just going to sit here and do this all day until you call the game in a delay. It was amazing.
A very consistent and stern response. I figured you would like that, Kevin. I figured you as a baseball fan and just your kind of sports interests with stories like that, I figure you would like it.
Yeah, because it's just the ultimate in give me another one. Nope, we're not throwing with this one. Give me another one. Come on, just throw it out here. Aren't you going to throw it away? Well, yeah, but just keep it. Come on, one more. Nope. We're not. I'm not pitching till you call this game. It was amazing. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. Lucas Sims on the mound for the Reds last night was like, "Oh, you don't want to call this game? I'm just going to make sure you call this game here in a minute." We'll come back. Take 3 around the corner. Also, look at the way too early offensive rankings in the SEC. 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett here with you on this Thursday. We'll get to looking at some of the new coaches in college football and who might be in the best position to push for a college football playoff spot in the near future. Also, look a way too early prediction we did with the ACC. Who might be a way too early prediction for the Offensive Player of the Year in the SEC? We'll get to that as well. But first, we were loaded up in hour number 2, had to push it back to now. Let's take 3 here on 3 and Out.
What was that noise, Kevin? Was that a little bit of lunch left in your throat there?
Let's take 1 here on the show is what it is. Had a little,
You all right?
I'm good. Take 1. What is something your team could do in the draft? Oh, you're going to read it? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kevin. You're already there. You already started.
Now you're going to be upset. He's going to be like that. No, go ahead. It's a real battle of the minds here in the studio, BJ. I'm sorry. But
I'm just watching in amazement and just kind of enjoying it, quite frankly.
What is something your team could do in the draft that would make you throw the remote at the old tube?
I mean, not draft Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall. And a couple of months ago, there was, and I don't know if it was just, folks trying to write stories, but there seemed like there was at least some possibility of this when you read some of the reports from the experts and whatnot and read the blogs, like maybe there's a chance Jacksonville doesn't take Trevor Lawrence. And to me, I think Fields is fantastic. But to me, that would have been, overthinking it a little bit, just given that, since we saw Lawrence as a true freshman go undefeated and win the national title, everybody was like, hey, he's going to be the number 1 pick. And kind of the late changes are what make me nervous. Like I've told you guys about Mac Jones. I like Mac Jones a lot. But the fact that for, 6 months, and normally the pre-draft stuff is that long, he's going to be a 2nd-round pick, maybe a late 1st-round pick, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's going top 5. Well, some of that, when nothing has changed on the field, that happened after he had already had statistically the most proficient season ever. That had already happened, and you hadn't seen the, I guess, corresponding move up the draft rankings until like 2 or 3 weeks ago. That always makes me nervous. So let's draft Trevor Lawrence, and the rest of it we can figure out.
Sure. I mean, I think if I'm looking at it, I'll go with the Falcons here. And I've said for weeks, I don't know that there's a whole lot they could do that would make me go, excuse me? Like, really? That's what it. I do think if Justin Fields, and I've said this consistently, about the only thing that would make me really get kind of frustrated with him would be if Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are off the board, which we know Trevor Lawrence will be, and you go with Trey Lance when you have Matt Ryan. I think, again, there's other drafts. You have Matt Ryan for a couple years. You literally can have any other player in the draft as the number 1 pick, not a quarterback. I don't think there's any way they can mess this up unless it's Trey Lance after the other 3 guys are gone. I don't think the Falcons can screw this up. Trade back, fine. Draft Kyle Pitts, fine. Penei Sewell, fine. It does. I don't think there's a way they can mess this up, BJ. And I know you are not one to subscribe to the philosophy of don't say there's not a way Team X, Y, or Z cannot screw it up, because yes, there is. I really don't think there's a way Atlanta could mess this up in the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they're in a great spot. Obviously, you have new leadership, but people were very frustrated. Some were at the A.J. Terrell pick. Some were very frustrated at Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. So you've had some recent picks that not everybody loved, but yeah, I think Fontenot is going to do a good job.
You got to talk it out, Kevin.
I did say Trey Lance.
No, I'm not saying that. You got to talk it out. What is everybody saying they're thinking about doing? Trading out of the pick, right? You trade out of the pick. You're down at 10. Patrick Surtain's there, something like that, right? Just for example, and then you draft an offensive lineman that somebody had graded, I don't know, 2 rounds away from where you draft him, and then you take the picks that you garnered from trading back.
But that's residual anger. That's not in the moment.
And then you trade back into the 1st round and you reach again. I think Falcons fans are getting a little too comfortable saying, hey, there's no way we can screw this up. We get one of the best players in the draft. If you make a pick at 4,
we get
one of the best players in the draft, or we get to trade back and get all these picks. Well, who's to say they won't screw those picks up too? Don't get too comfortable, Falcons fans.
I'm just saying if they, I think trading out would be a good move, not knowing where they're going to trade.
But then you have to execute those picks, Kevin.
If they make a pick at 4, not Trey Lance, I think they can't screw that up.
Like, and honesty, like outside of Calvin Ridley, when was the last time they made a first round pick where you're like, that was a damn good pick?
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand. I trust me. But again, outside of
You're way
quarterback,
too optimistic for
no,
me
but
right here.
if you stick at 4, you pick the best player on your board, not at quarterback. At every other position, you could pick them. Like, I don't see how you get that wrong. I mean, maybe the guy doesn't turn out, but it's like in the moment.
Well, you get it wrong by reaching for a guy. You do you do what Cody says to do, and you're like, wow, we really need a corner. Let's draft Patrick Surtain like 10 spots ahead of where most people have him.
Kyle Pitts, Panay Sewell, like, right?
That's fine. If you do that, that's great.
I don't think there's that. Those are not like. Oops,
but Kevin, as a person who's watched the Falcons basically since they've been in existence, because you're really old too.
Andre Bruce, first
right.
That, yeah.
You were watching like Tommy Nobis and all those guys. When was the last time you watched a draft and you're like, they executed that trade well? They won that trade. They got that right.
I understand. And
Julio.
Well, I mean,
I think a lot of people, BJ, say
on draft night they were not happy.
No, I mean in the years to come, because the Falcons just didn't have anybody to put around them. I think a lot of people say that the Falcons did not win that trade. I think that's actually more split than you think, because they gave up a haul.
Yeah, I understand that, but I would disagree with that. Julio Jones is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
But
you got a franchise receiver out of it. I mean,
to the Super Bowl, helped your quarterback win an MVP, one of the faces of the league. I mean, I would disagree.
What year was Julio drafted in, BJ? 2011?
2010? Yeah, somewhere around there, yeah.
A decade ago. Been a lot of Vic Beasleys in there.
He led the league in sacks one time. This one time?
About one time.
In NFL play?
Yep. Yeah, so what you want to do with first-round picks, just get one good year out of them.
I think the only thing I'd be upset at in the moment would be Trey Lance with the other 2 guys off the board, which they will be. Optimism is what it is. I mean, if you're going into the thing being like, hey, we're already screwing it up before it happens, then I mean,
if you're pessimistic, you can't be disappointed.
You can't think of yourself as like, early 2000s.
That's the official
Buffalo
mantra.
Bills,
this is the official
Cleveland
mantra.
Browns. We've already screwed it up. Nothing's happened yet. What?
This is
I want to get that. I want to get that on a bumper sticker. Optimism. It is what it is.
No. That's Kevin's. The mantra, the bumper sticker for Atlanta sports fans is: if you expect the worst, you can't be disappointed.
I thought it was we're doomed.
Oh, cursed, I think is a better word for it.
There's no like cool story to go with the alleged curse, like a goat or Babe Ruth getting drafted, or
Julian Edelman levitating and catching a ball against the. Yeah, there's no stories.
That's still not as cool as
there's no stories.
Trading Babe Ruth for financing a Broadway show. Anyways, take 2. Ben is not here today, obviously, but with Ben off the show, what is your favorite Ben-ism? And you can play along, Christian. Come on.
I mean, I think it's the hat. I really do, because here's here's why. And I'll say,
but an ism is a saying. A Ben-ism would be a saying.
No. I think it's an extension of Ben. I'm going to say it's the hats, because I thought there was one, right, and the hat was a brief phenomenon on the show where like people were writing in, and Rich Styles apparently with Rich Styles got inspired. I don't know if he actually got the hat. I know Ben said he was going to get you a hat, get Rich a hat, but there's like multiple versions. You got the tan one, you got the green one, you got the all white one. So he's got multiple hats, and just given that I'm seeing you guys for 3 hours every day on here, I see the hat, and the hat's just like.
But BJ, we literally have a whole board in the office of Ben-isms. Like, we wrote them down.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the hat's been good. I like the hat.
I mean, the whole thing about it is that's my favorite.
That's got to be the title of Ben's memoirs. Is the thing about it
is that would be by Ben Troop. Well, what's yours, Christian?
I mean, if you guys want to go through it, like with me.
I mean,
here.
we have Morgasboard, which we've brought on the show quite a bit.
My favorite might be Bargain Burner. Like, that might be the all-time best. Like, what is a bargain burner, Ben? Is that like a barn burner but with bargains? That might be my favorite.
Yeah. From the Raptors?
No, that's Jay. Jay said that. He also combined.
No, he did not. Ben said that. That's where Jay got.
Jay stole it from
yes,
Ben and made
from
it
the
and then made it
Raptors.
his Twitter.
No, I thought it was Jay and Ben like together created that.
Yes.
He also hit us with, he combined two of the great golfers of this current generation into Dustin Thomas. You had, hey, Rich, tell us what Dustin Thomas is going to do at the Masters this year. And it's like, do you mean Dustin Johnson or Justin Thomas? Because which one are we talking about? He's like, Dustin Thomas. He's got Dustin Johnson's height with Justin Thomas's short game. It's actually pretty phenomenal.
Any other ones, BJ, that we're allowing you to go away from the hat? I mean, he's got a whole board written down of these things.
Well, you have to remember, I haven't been to the office in like over
It's
a
fine,
year.
neither is he.
I mean, so,
called Matt Kuchar, Matt Cusser.
yeah, that was pretty good. I haven't looked at the board. In a long time.
Oh, Abisk.
Yeah, yeah.
Abisk is pretty amazing. Talk that talk. Talk to them.
Talk to them. Talk directly to them.
Talk about it.
Are you just running down the? We literally had a Ben dictionary that we made in the office. It was amazing.
A bentionary.
Is a bentionary. Made at the office. All right, we got to move along. Take 3. We're going to be up against it. Today's a wonderful holiday that Christian likes to rip. Today is National Bring Your Kids to Work Day. What is your favorite memory of either A, a work event with your kids, or B, an event with your parent when they brought you to their work for Bring Your Kid to Work Day? I have some great ones.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know this isn't a good answer to that question, but like my favorite bring a kid to work moment is when you brought your kids to work. But I'll let you tell. With my kids,
tell that story.
No. I'll let Kevin tell
everybody's got a story apparently about me bringing my kids to the office. So I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah. With me, it's like my kids always say, "I want to talk on the radio. And I'm like, all right, I'll come up and even just off the air, record your voice or whatever, and then they won't talk. And it's just so predictable and so consistent. They constantly want to talk on the radio. And I think a couple of times my son has come on live and he said like one word and he just looks at me like I'm making him do something that he doesn't want to do, when in reality he's been begging me to come do it. So I think that's just always been super predictable with my kids.
We literally have a liner saying, "This is canon." Like he got pretty hyped up for that.
But that was a long time ago.
It took some convincing.
Like he got maybe he's just like real G's moving silence like lasagna now. He's not about that life no more.
All right. Mine, or do you want to share yours, or do you want me to go ahead?
I mean, my favorite
I've got
forever will be like when I was a kid going to school with my dad and just like hanging out behind his desk while he was teaching. That was always really cool to me. I don't have any children of my own, so I don't have any of those stories. But yeah, and here, favorite moment ever is I was standing outside of the studio. Your kids were in there, and for those of you who don't know, like our foyer kind of has like a is kind of like a foyer. It's kind of like a couch, a couple chairs, there's a TV out there. It's big. And so his kids were out there just kind of shooting on the little mini door hoop, hanging out. But one of your children, I'm not going to say who, was losing his mind while y'all were on the show, banging on the door, trying to get in the studio, yelling at people. He was having a kid spasm moment. A spasm moment. It happens, right? Like dogs have it when they like run around really fast. Yeah, they get the zooms where they run around. He was kind of having one of those moments. We went to break, and you came out of the studio, picked your child up, looked him in the eyes and said, "Calm down." And then like a cold-blooded killer, your son looked you dead in the eyes and said, "I can't."
I mean, all right. So along those lines, these are my two for bring your kid to work. I don't think we did it as like, our office. We just kind of, hey, our kids come up here after school and stuff. It's fine. But this is one that goes back to when they were much smaller. I think my oldest son was like, 4 maybe, BJ? 4 or 5. And BJ and I were up in the studio maybe on a Saturday morning. I brought my son up there with me. It's like, hey, it's kind of relaxed. There's nobody up there. So BJ and I are doing the radio show, and my son is walking around playing. Okay, no big deal. And we see him go into the room where all of our, main equipment is housed. All of a sudden, everything just goes. He didn't unplug. He turned off the power to everything, all the satellite receivers, everything. So we had nothing going out over the air. And I immediately go running out. And he's standing there. What happened was we have like the little battery backup. You know, have you seen those? The universal power supplies that they have. And it's got a nice little glowing button on the front. And he was like, oh, a button. And pushed it. And then once the battery drained, like a few minutes later or however long, he's like, yeah, it all went down. And he just like, don't ever press that button. This for you is like the
maybe don't correct your child there. Maybe don't leave a 4-year-old child unattended in a radio studio.
Of all the things to touch, I didn't know it'd be a button on the floor in the back.
Like Kevin,
like it's in the back. Like it's
there's a lot of electronics in here,
not protruding anything like that. So that was one. The second one was also my oldest son, BJ, and I again on a Saturday morning. My wife's laughing at me right now, telling a story. So we're doing BJ and I. This is probably a long time ago. We're doing a show on Saturday morning, and our old studio. You had the main desk where the host sat, and then you had a side mic for the guest, which was kind of by the door to the studio. So I'm sitting in the guest spot for the show, and my son, I was like, "Hey, we got 5 minutes, and I'll be done, and we can go." He's like, "I want to come in there." I'm like, "Well, I know you can't be quiet, so we're not gonna do it." So BJ starts doing the show. My son tries to come in. I hold the door closed, and I'm doing the show, and he starts freaking out, beating on the door, kicking on the door, screaming, "Let me in!" I'm holding the door closed, trying to do live radio. It was absolutely amazing. BJ, did I forget any of the? You have any present for both of those? Did I forget any of the pertinent details in those stories?
I just love your face, like when your son turned off the station. You know, you're just looking around, going, "Wait, what happened? Was there a weather issue?" Nope, it was my son. And I just see your face, and now I understand.
I mean, your kids are awesome. Like,
no, they are. I'm not saying, but it's
BJ, I had to ban them from the studio because they literally got into a fist fight in our production studio. I was like, we're doing a show, and there's just like chairs being thrown, punches. People getting hit in the face. I had to drag them out by their shirt collars and throw them out of the studio. I was like, "Hey, listen, it's like a bartender throwing a guy out of a bar. Like, you two don't come back. You guys don't come back."
The funny thing is, you had to do that because again, I'm in here trying to do live radio while there's UFC 385 happening out in the lobby out there where they're just beating the brakes off each other.
And we were talking about this earlier. Your older son better be careful.
Oh, yeah,
because your younger son, I think, may start catching him in height and weight and be bigger than him. So the whole picking on him thing might catch up to him soon.
Scrappy. So it's like, it's interesting. I really kind of don't know. They enjoy fighting with each other.
That's what brothers
BJ, you
do.
have two brothers. I wasn't like a dual brother. I had a younger sister, but you talk about the brotherly love situation. Like, when does that start? Because right now it's like, hey, he looked at me and inhaled oxygen. I'm mad. Like that. That's that's literally what happens.
I mean, I have one brother, but yeah, JT is somebody that I've grown to love over the years even more. I love him more now than ever. But dude, when you're kids, right? I mean, it's just back and forth. And JT had a birthday a couple of days ago. Happy belated birthday, JT. But yeah, when you're young, you're just scrapping and getting after.
But BJ, when y'all were young, you were giving it to him, right? Like, he didn't want none of that smoke.
I mean, JT's bigger than me, man. I mean, at some point,
now, but when you were a kid,
he was bigger than me pretty quick. I just said, all right.
But then you got to be mentally smarter than him and just devastate him emotionally, right?
I mean, I wish you the best of luck with that.
That's what I do to my brother.
That's take 3. We got more to come. I don't know how we top some of that stuff, but we got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on this Thursday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you're making us a part of your day. A lot of great stories from last segment, but we move forward into the world of coaching, where I'm sure all these guys have plenty of stories to tell. But BJ, a lot of new coaches and new spots here for 2021. Which coach do you think is in the best position to get his team in the college football playoff first? Not necessarily this year, but first. Gus Malzahn at Central Florida, Brian Harsin at Auburn, Steve Sarkisian there with Texas.
Yeah, it's interesting with all three of those guys because with Harsin and Sarkisian, you're taking over programs where your arch rival is clearly ahead of you, right? Oklahoma's well ahead of Texas, Alabama's well ahead of Auburn, so that makes it kind of hard in theory to think that in the immediate near future you're going to be in that playoff format. Whereas Central Florida's been really good, they're going to remain really good, but they're not a P5 team. And I think that it feels like we're getting closer, maybe in terms of the public desire for a G5 team to be in the Final Four, but I don't know how practical that is. You know, it would take kind of a perfect aligning of the stars. I kind of want to say Malzahn because I think UCF is probably, you know, if you were to say which one of those three teams is most likely to win 12 games first, it would be UCF, right? Which one of those teams is most likely to win its conference title first? It would be UCF. I think you would even say which one of those teams is most likely to make a New Year's Six bowl game. You would say UCF. But is that the same as making the playoff? No, it's not. Maybe you go Texas because of that, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we see, you know, more of a kind of open idea as it pertains to a G5 school getting into the playoff. So just, you know, for that, I'll say UCF.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just don't see it happening because, again, Gus Malzahn, for as good as he is, I mean, there's a lot more hurdles he's going to have to jump at UCF to get into playoff as currently constituted to get there than Brian Harsin or Steve Sarkisian is going to have to overcome. So I understand why you say that, but I mean, we have just real life in front of us evidence of Central Florida going undefeated. And I mean, they got a New Year's Six. Congratulations, I guess.
Well, we've seen Auburn go undefeated and not play for it all too. But I understand, yeah.
But if that happens now, we know where Auburn's going, right? I mean, in the playoff, they go undefeated, they're in the playoffs. I mean, you're the SEC champion at that point. You're going to the playoffs. So I think it is Brian Harsin because if they have a solid season, you are right there. Now, right now, obviously you say, oh, well, you got to beat Alabama. That's not going to happen. Well, they've beaten Alabama recently at Auburn. So it's not unfeasible that just a new coach with new ideas, new way of doing things can't come in there and figure out a way to win the SEC West. If you do that, I mean, you got a leg up over the other two guys right there trying to get to the playoffs. Steve Sarkisian's interesting, BJ. I think I don't know if you want to call it a rebuild, but I mean, ever since, you know, you had the Texas statement of we're back after they beat Georgia, they've been anything but. I think Oklahoma's got kind of the stranglehold over that thing right now in the Big 12. When's Texas going to be able to get over that hump? I'm not so sure when they're going to be able to do that. So I think Brian Harsin's in the best shape to do it. I mean, unless Steve Sarkisian just lands a quarterback early and he's able to come in and –
But Kevin, the climb, man, in the SEC West, I mean, not only do you have Alabama, but Texas A&M and LSU, I mean –
it sounds ridiculous, but I also think because of that, we've seen teams that are in – I mean, we've heard rumblings, depending on how strong the West is, that, hey, number 2 in the West might still be good enough to make the playoffs because it's so tough. So, I mean, you're talking about a coach that potentially doesn't even need to win his division to get some love, potentially for a playoff spot. Those other two guys got a little more work to do. So
I hear you. And I mean, Texas probably has the best infrastructure in place in terms of, you know, potentially the recruiting base and, you know, being in a conference where you don't have 3-4 teams that are necessarily ahead of you every single year. I mean, Auburn plays Georgia every year too. So you got to look at it like this. Auburn every single year plays Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Georgia. I mean, that's a really difficult challenge.
It is. But again, I think Auburn's got the wherewithal to get there. Here's the interesting part about Texas. You say, from a resources standpoint, yeah, I think them and BYU are the only schools that have their own network, right? I think BYU has BYU TV and Longhorn Network for Texas. They have a lot of money. That being said, if it comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes, as they say, how much is Jimbo Fisher siphoning off what Texas would normally get simply because, hey, I'm also in the top 10. I'm playing in the SEC. I'm playing a quote unquote national schedule because we got Alabama and Auburn and LSU and all that versus Texas. And I know Baylor's in the Big 12 and you've got Texas Tech and TCU and you're competing in state for conference recruits. Texas A&M is Jimbo Fisher's, they're selling a different steak, right? I mean, we got a lot of people out there putting their menu out, and Jimbo Fisher comes on and goes, well, guess what, fellas? I got a little filet mignon. I got a little creme brulee I can throw in for dessert that you can't offer. And that's to play in the SEC. I mean, how much of that you say, oh, he's at Texas, he ought to be able to get recruits. But are you getting the recruits? Or is Jimbo Fisher in the state of Texas siphoning those guys off to the SEC?
I mean, I think there's probably enough talent to support multiple programs at a championship level. You know, we've seen the state of Florida obviously have multiple programs compete at different times at a championship level. I mean, Texas A&M has done a great job, and they are one of the national names that are right there at the front of college football right now. But I still think Texas potentially fewer obstacles in terms of opponents, right there every single year. And then with UCF, like you said, you're 11-1, 12-0 every year, but is that enough? You can only do what you can do. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
And so there's a quick look at some of the teams looking to compete quickly and maybe have a chance to get into the college football playoffs. We got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Thursday all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Live on ESPNCoastal.com as well, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Just total chaos here in the studio on a Thursday. We talked about this in hour one, BJ, the way too early predictions for ACC Offensive Player of the Year. What about in the SEC, where obviously just talent everywhere in this league right now? Who's your way too early pick looking at Offensive Player of the Year in the SEC?
Yeah, and you have a couple of candidates. I mean, I think the way Bryce Young played in the spring game against that defense and the fact that he's going to be the starting quarterback at Alabama, you think about him, obviously, local product. I think Kevin Harris, the running back at South Carolina, fresh off 1,200 yards, 6 yards per carry, is a player to keep an eye on. Isaiah Spiller at Texas A&M, over 1,000 yards, big time in the passing game as well. I think that you're talking about a couple of quarterbacks. JT Daniels probably deserves consideration. But for me, I think it's Matt Corral. You look at the numbers last year, and this was as a true sophomore, so you expect him to take a step forward in terms of proficiency. Two numbers stand out to me. 71% completions, which is really, really good. The collegiate average is probably somewhere around 60, and he was at 71% passing. And then you're talking about 10.2 yards per pass attempt. So like we discussed with Sam Howell, you're throwing the ball downfield. You're not just checking down, you're pushing the ball downfield. Look, there's talent everywhere in this league, especially at quarterback, even guys that we don't know yet, or maybe still have questions about, a guy like a Bo Nix, for example. But I think Matt Corral has a good chance to be the number one overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and they're going to score points. I mean, he's in an offense where they're going to score. I mean, you look. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. Do you look at, some other guys around the league, because his numbers are going to be gaudy. Like you said, they're going to score points. They might also be, 4-8, 5-7 at the end of the day.
Yeah, but said when I asked, we weren't taking into account team records. I thought that was the rule.
BJ's changing the rules. I'm changing the rules. Okay.
No, I asked you that at the beginning.
But you can't have guys win it who aren't necessarily on winning teams, but that's usually not the case.
Kevin, literally the example you gave was what happens when a guy rushes for 4,000 yards and his team doesn't win anything. No, but that was the example you gave, saying that we don't have to take into account team success.
Usually you don't, but there's probably guys with similar numbers on a team that went 9-3.
Well, yeah, but team's 11-0 and the quarterback's thrown for the same amount of yards as the team that's 3-9.
Like JT Daniels may not have the numbers of Matt Corral, but if JT Daniels gets Georgia to 11-1, 12-0, could he make a case for Offensive Player of the Year?
No, that's what,
and not put up the gaudy numbers because Matt Corral's is balling out.
There's a difference between MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in my mind.
Well, if Georgia makes it to 12-0, I think he's going to have a huge reason to do with that.
But what happens when Georgia makes it to 12-0 and he's thrown for like 2,800 yards and you've had 6 running backs run for 500 yards?
Do you think that's what it's going to be? It could be, but if you get the full influx of the air raid system, he might have a really good year throwing the football that you.
I'm just saying, I don't inherently think team record has anything to do with offense or defensive player of the year. If a guy has 30 sacks and the team's not good, he's still the defensive player of the year.
Okay. Yeah, and I think if you're talking about team success, you look at Bryce Young. Obviously, he's going to be productive. He's going to win games. He's going to be one of the most recognizable players in the country. He's probably going to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, and he is very talented. Was great in the spring game, but I still think if you're talking about, and I'm confused now, but the previously established kind of guidelines for Offensive Player of the Year, I think you're looking at Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin's offense. They're going to, Kevin, they're going to score 45 a game. I understand what you're saying.
Where it's kind of like that's the byproduct of running the Lane Kiffin system, where right now, if you just look at straight numbers, his are going to be ridiculous.
Oh, that's a different conversation.
That's
a different conversation.
That's what I'm saying. You're going to give him Offensive Player of the Year because of the numbers. No, the numbers are going to be huge.
That's a different conversation.
That's like saying a Mike Leach quarterback's going to complete 70%. But
you're having a different conversation now. Now you're saying based on his system, he's going to have an amazing year. You're not talking about wins or losses. That's a different conversation you're having now.
I understand that, but when you're talking about Offensive Player of the Year and you're going to say Matt Corral is going to have insane stats, so is that just get it by default? I'm not saying regardless of what he does. we know right now on April the 22nd that if he stays healthy, his numbers are going to be ridiculous because of the system. He's also very good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, but like we know right now, his numbers are going to look insane because I mean they were awesome last year. So I'm just saying, like, when do you take into account when you're talking about the offensive player of the year when you know this guy's going to put up stats?
I think
because he plays for
my
Lane
point
Kiffin.
is Matt Corral can't play corner or defensive end.
But that doesn't have any. I'm talking about his numbers in the system he runs. You know, kind of by default, he's going to put up huge numbers. Why? Because he plays for Lane Kiffin.
But I'm not going to take it away from Matt Corral when he's completing a 30-yard pass to a wide receiver against an SEC defense just because Lane Kiffin called the play.
I understand that.
Like he still has to throw the pass.
I get it. I get it. I mean, I'm saying, like, there are certain guys, like, if you go by straight numbers, wouldn't Mike Leach's Washington State quarterbacks win Offensive Player of the Year because they were throwing?
I get what you're saying to a certain extent with that, but I think the proficiency numbers are going to be there with Corral, right? It's not just macro.
What's the next step to just the raw numbers? And that's a totally valid point.
Yeah, I think what you do need to see.
Insane.
I think what you do need to see is a slight reduction in the interceptions through I think 14 or 15 interceptions last year. So if he can maintain the high completion percentage with the yard per attempt average and trim down on some of the interceptions, I think not only SEC honors but national honors could be in his future. But you got some guy. I mean, Christian, you had Tank Bigsby, right?
Yeah, I think you look at what Kevin Harris was able to do at South Carolina last year with Mike Bobo as his OC. And he averaged 6.2 yards a carry. I think went for 1,300 yards, BJ, in 10 games. And now you look at Tank Bigsby, who last year behind a very okay and not an overly run-centric offense with Gus Malzahn last year where they just didn't have an identity. Tank Bigsby still against a really hard schedule rushed for 6 yards per carry as a true freshman in the SEC, had over 800 yards on the ground. Now Mike Bobo is the offensive coordinator at Auburn. And Brian Harson's a guy who likes to run the football as well. So you're going to get to see Tank Bigsby dot the I a little bit. And I think he's going to see an uptick in carries. If he can maintain that 6.0 yard per carry pace and Auburn finishes with some good rushing stats and a good offensive line and Bo Nix can get back to where he's been, I think Tank Bigsby actually be the centerpiece of that offense. And if they can get him the ball enough, because I know they have some other talented backs, but I think he's far and away the best back. They can get him the ball enough. I think he should be absolutely a favorite to win that.
So there's a quick look at some of our potential nominees for way too early offensive players of the year in the SEC. We'll come back. We got more to come here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you are with us. Again, if you missed any portion of the show, you can go to espncoastal.com, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, get a podcasted version of the show each and every day. Of course, conversation continues there on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. No Braves baseball tonight, BJ. They are off. We'll have the Braves and Diamondbacks tomorrow and should have Ronald Acuna Jr. back in the lineup, which would be great news for Atlanta as well.
Yeah. I mean, the hottest player in baseball, one of the 2 or 3 best players in baseball. Can't wait for that. On base percentage, still around 500, which is just absurd. So looking forward to that. Kevin, are you wearing a shirt that says "Rub some dirt" on it?
I am.
For the baseball. Okay. Yeah. But so you got some coaching coming up?
Yeah, I got to go mold young minds, which Christian and Cody said is a scary thought. So yeah, after the show, I'm headed out to a ball field. Go figure.
But looking forward to seeing Acuna. And listen, like I said, I think it was a big win over New York. I know it's just one game and you're still under 500, but give you a little bit of momentum. I've heard the guys on the Braves radio network say that just being around there's a different energy on an off day after a win than a loss. I mean, that makes sense. And then you're talking about going into a weekend series where you feel like you're the better team. You're at home. You feel like you'll have a little bit of a boost. Needless to say, with Ronald Acuna Jr. And I think Smiley's set to come back in the next couple of days as well. Maybe make a start in a few days. So look, you've had some losing streaks that have been frustrating. Needless to say, but I think you're in a position where you can find some traction here over the next week or two, I think.
BJ, I hope you never go into real estate because the way you sold that win, you're like, listen, it was a big win. Listen, I know it was only one win. I know you're still under 500. The team you beat was under 500, but it's a big win. I just never go to sales, man. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Hey man, listen, I'm gonna say, look, man, this house, I mean, it's all right. I mean, it's fine. This
is the perfect house for you. It's okay. The neighborhood's fine. Like,
the road you can have a few more things put in.
The road could use some work.
I just didn't want to overstate the win. I mean, Kevin says I get caught up in the moment, and sometimes I am a little exaggerated with some of my. So I'm trying to be more, look, it was one game, but I do think in a season where you've played, close to 20 games and it's been, I would say, a disappointment. I think that could be a little bit of a momentum boost for a team that probably needs a little bit. I mean, it was shorthanded, right? I mean, I know the Yankees aren't good.
Jab of reality.
Yeah, it's a disappointment.
I mean, they're playing better, but it was a disappointing start to the season. But no, hey, you're going to have Acuna back. You're right. Smiley, I think, is set to pitch on Saturday. So getting some of the
you're missing 60% of your starting rotation. Just take a chill pill.
Yeah, I'm
and your best reliever probably, and the best player in baseball. So yeah,
just relax.
The fact that they are where they are is amazing. So soak it up and enjoy it, BJ. Come on.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I'm
Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm with you in the fact that where they are, that's amazing. I don't know that I can agree with that. But I do think, I'm
considering the roster they're working with right now. Yeah,
the fact that they literally had to play like 9 straight top of the rotation pitchers.
I get it. I'm just not saying 8 and 10 is amazing. Is all I'm saying.
I think it's like borderline groundbreaking.
Hey, look, in a couple of weeks after they haven't played the National League East, just constantly, they'll be fine, and you'll be singing a different tune, right? I mean, that's the whole deal.
Got to stay away from the Marlins.
Well, for right now, I don't get down on the team yet. They've got a lot of baseball left. I think they're playing all right. And hey, you go to New York, even if they're struggling, you really had an opportunity to take 2 games in New York and have the sweep, and it just got away from you with a bad outing from a little bit of your bullpen. So look, brighter days are coming with this Braves team. I feel like you haven't played your best baseball, and you're right there.
Kevin, brighter days would indicate that there were dark days, and there haven't been any dark days, man.
You were alive in the 80s, buddy. So
okay, are we referring to decade spans right now, or are we referring to the season?
Hold on, you weren't alive in the 80s?
Me? No.
Wow.
You've been on the show this long and just now realized that. I mean, you're getting old yourself, so it happens.
BJ, you realize the 90s were like 21 years ago, right?
I mean, Kevin, you are right. Getting old, you don't realize it, and then you realize, somebody that's on the show wasn't even alive in the 80s.
Yeah, they just don't understand anything about anything. That's really the way it goes. We'll see you tomorrow. Friday edition, 3 and Out. Again, if you missed any portion of today's show, ESPNCoastal.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can get the archive version. What I messed up?
No, nothing. You just got to do the Rich where you're like, yeah, it's on YouTube and some other stuff.
We'll see you tomorrow, 3 and Out.